Look, up in the sky. It's a bird.
It's a plane!
It's Superman.
What more can be said about arguably the most iconic superhero of all time? Right next to Batman and Spider-Man, Superman has been one of the most well-known and recognizable characters for so many people. Since his creation in 1938, people of all ages have been inspired by his strength and unbridled optimism. But unfortunately, the Man of Steel has not had the best track record when it comes to movies. They managed to capture lightning in a bottle in the 70s, and every single time they've tried it since has ranged from to huh? Well, before James Gunn throws his hat into the ring with his Superman movie, I decided to go back and take a look at every theatrically released Superman movie. And yes, I said theatrical, which means I won't be covering any of the TV serial movies or any of the animated films. I'm also not going to be covering Supergirl since she has her own reboot movie coming out next year, so I figured I'd just talk about it then. But everything else is fair game. So sit back and enjoy as I watch every Superman movie. Kicking off this journey is Superman the Movie, released in 1978, directed by Richard Donner and starring Christopher Reeves as the Man of Steel. The first 30 to 40 minutes of the movie details his origin, being sent to Earth from the planet Krypton before its destruction, landing in the care of John and Martha Kent,
Why did you say that name?
learning to adapt to human life, and discovering his true lineage. The next hour and a half shows him living as Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter for the Daily Planet, and Superman, the caped hero that fights for truth, justice, in the American way. This was a really good movie. It's hard not to just feel genuinely happy watching this because of how hopeful and optimistic the movie is. This isn't some dark, brooding loner fighting in a seedy underworld or a cynical asshole learning humility. This is a genuinely good dude who is just trying to help people. And that wasn't meant to be a slight on heroes like Batman or Iron Man. They're both great characters for different reasons, and I can understand why people might consider Superman a boring character because of his unbridled altruism, but that's part of why I think this movie works and why I think Superman has survived as long as he has, because people need a symbol of hope and joy. And it's also balanced out really well by his Clark Kent persona, a much more dopey, naive outsider trying to wade through a lot of the cynicism around him. I love the dichotomy between the two personas, and Reeve plays both of them really well. The cast across the board is great. Margot Kidder plays holy crap Lois Lane, and she is really entertaining as the overzealous reporter shepherding Clark around and trying to get a good story. Although it was constantly funny whenever they called her out for her spelling mistakes. The late Gene Hackman is in this movie playing Lex Luthor, and he is a pretty fun villain. He's very campy and over the top, his henchmen are hilarious. I don't know how this portrayal compares to the comics or other iterations, but they fit so well for the era. Speaking of, the visuals of the movie, for being made in 1978, look pretty damn good. It's obviously dated and a little cheesy, but it's also very creative and inventive and even kind of ambitious. The movie is trying to go for an epic feel, from the cinematography to the sets to the visual effects to the iconic John Williams score. And with the budget they had, I think they achieved it. There's obviously stuff about it that I don't think works. The bits in the opening after he crashes to Earth do feel a bit rushed. I kind of would have liked to see more of his life with the Kents before he discovers the Fortress of Solitude and it flashes forward to his adult years. Also, I didn't really understand what Lex's goal was and why he wanted to blow up that area other than he considered it the crime of the century. But other than that, I really enjoyed the movie. It was fun, it was campy, it was hopeful, it was epic. It was a damn good superhero movie. Next is Superman 2, shot back to back with the first film and released 3 years later. In this one, we see the Kryptonian criminals from the intro of the first, led by General Zod, played by Terrence Stamp, escape capture from the Phantom Zone and make their way to Earth to take over. Meanwhile, Lois finally discovers that Clark is Superman, and they both confess their love for each other. But being together means that Clark has to give up his powers, which doesn't bode well, seeing as how there are 3 evil Kryptonians destroying the city in an effort to challenge Superman. A lot of people cite this movie as one of the best superhero sequels, and honestly, I don't see it. I mean, it's not bad by any means, and considering it was another case of switching directors last minute and tinkering with the original version, it could have been a lot worse. But I don't know, this movie just didn't hit the same as the first movie. There isn't as much charm and whimsy. The characters, particularly Clark and Lois, feel especially neutered in this movie. They have very selfish motivations, which I know Clark is in love and he's still navigating his experience as a human, but still, would he honestly give up his powers to be with a woman who never really gave a shit about him until she found out he was a superhero? It not only weakens his character, but it plays up how kind of shallow and dim Lois is. She is literally throwing herself into deadly situations with the notion that Superman will always save her, which of course he does, but still. I also didn't really feel the weight of any of these decisions the characters made. Superman irresponsibly gives up his powers, but then gets them back with no struggle. The ending makes it seem like Lois and Clark are gonna have to grapple with the fact that they have to keep this secret, but then he just kisses her and wipes her memory, so what was even the point of it all? It's very awkwardly paced, moments aren't given time to breathe. I've heard these issues are fixed in the Donner cut, but I haven't seen it. Also, I love Gene Hackman as Luthor, but I don't think he needed to be in this movie. You could have showed him breaking out of jail as a teaser for the next one, but I don't think he needed to be the secondary villain when you already had plenty of material with Zod and the others. With all that said, there are still things about the movie that keep it above water. The best part of the movie are the 3 Kryptonian villains. Zod, Ursa, and Non steal every scene they're in. They are so much fun to watch. They work great off each other, and they make for a legit fun threat. The camp factor of the first film is still there. The visuals, while not as polished, are still very fun and creatively executed. The acting is solid. There are some fun sequences, particularly in the last third. And like I said, I didn't hate this movie or think it was terrible. It just wasn't as good as the first one. I'd still recommend watching it if you haven't. Just don't expect anything groundbreaking. I take back everything I said. Superman 2 is goddamn Spider-Verse compared to Superman 3. Released in 1983 and once again directed by Richard Lester. Pretty much every problem I had with the theatrical cut of Superman 2 is here magnified without any of the good stuff. Instead of balancing out the camp with some of the more interesting internal conflict, here it's just a straight up comedy. The opening credits sequence feels like a goddamn Tom and Jerry cartoon. The story centers around Clark going back to his hometown of Smallville and reconnecting with his high school sweetheart Lana, played by Annette O'Toole. While that's going on, a down-on-his-luck computer genius, played by Richard Pryor, is tasked by this evil executive, played by Robert Vaughn, to use his computer hacking skills to bend the world's supply chain to his whim, as well as developing a synthetic kryptonite in an attempt to kill Superman. I feel like describing this plot is gonna give me a brain hemorrhage. The villain's story is all over the place and makes no sense. There are about a dozen other side plots going on in this movie that don't really matter. Superman is essentially a supporting character because the movie wants to focus on unfunny Richard Pryor. And for as batshit as this movie gets in parts, most of it is a dull, boring slog. Even the actors don't seem to give a shit. A lot of the main players from the first two, like Margot Kidder, are written out of most of the movie. Like, even they knew it was gonna suck. The one aspect that is genuinely kind of fun is evil Superman. After Clark gets exposed to the synthetic kryptonite, he starts to change into more of an asshole. They do a lot of fun stuff with this. Like, a lot of his evil deeds are really petty shit, like blowing out the Olympic torch and straightening the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I like the physical transformation of how he gets more and more disheveled and his costume gets darker. And even though I think it could have been executed a bit better and more interesting, I liked the fight between Clark Kent and evil Superman. I thought there was some neat stuff in there, and Reeve does a great job playing both versions of Superman. Outside of that and some kind of fun stuff in the final act, this movie was awful. It was poorly written, boring as sin, and just felt like it went in every wrong direction it could have gone for this series. Surely it can't get any worse, right?
The only way for me to solve this crisis is to be Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
I was genuinely disappointed that this line was not in the actual movie. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace was released in 1987 and is considered by many to be the worst Superman movie of all time. And while I do agree that it is a bad movie, I honestly don't think it's as bad as Superman 3. For one thing, it was shorter. The story this time around sees Superman getting involved with America's nuclear arms race. After swearing that he will get rid of all the world's nuclear weapons in the name of peace, a plot is unearthed by Lex Luthor and his nephew Lenny, played by John Cryer, to cross Superman and Luthor's DNA with nuclear and solar energy to create the ultimate killing machine, Nuclear Man. Out of all the Superman movies, this one is infamous for having the most troubled production out of all of them. Well, almost all of them. The producers were very distant and ignorant to the project they had greenlit, the budget got slashed over and over again, and roughly 45 minutes of the movie were deleted after a failed test screening. The movie was essentially doomed from the start. Now, before I talk about the bad stuff, which is most of the movie, let me talk about the good stuff. Like I said, because of the deleted footage, the movie clocks in at 1 hour and 30 minutes, making it the shortest movie in the Superman series. Seeing as how much of what was reported to be in that extra footage didn't really add much to the story, cramming in unnecessary shit like a prototype Nuclear Man reminiscent of the villain Bizarro, I'm at least glad they had the foresight to not pad this thing out more than it already was. Despite the awful VFX, there are some admittedly fun sequences that, in theory, could have looked really cool. The fight with Nuclear Man where Superman plugs up a volcano with a mountaintop, to him rebuilding the Great Wall of China with his powers of stop motion, to a scene where he has a date with Lois and this new character Lacey as both Clark Kent and Superman, and he has to keep switching back and forth. It's a cute scene, although the whole time I was wondering why he didn't just split himself in two like he did in the previous movie. And while the script that they're given is absolute trash, God bless the actors for showing up and giving it their best, but they unfortunately don't do enough to save the movie they're in. The visual effects are hilariously bad, the keying and coloring is off, they reused this shot of Superman flying towards the camera like 18 times. Early 2000s internet reviews had better visual effects than this movie. The movie is once again filled with unnecessary subplots that don't add anything, like Clark selling his family farm after his mom died off screen. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that in the last one. The Daily Planet being bought out by this corrupt media outlet, and this kid who writes a letter to Superman asking to help out with the arms race and then disappears from the rest of the movie. There are so many plot holes and lapses in logic, even by this universe's standard. The character motivations feel very weak, and it's just overall a bafflingly stupid movie. So why is this not worse than Superman 3? Well, for one, it wasn't boring. There are some things about it that I like, and most of the stuff that's bad crosses over into the so bad it's good territory. Unlike Superman 3, which is just bad. It was a slightly easier sit, but I will never say it's a good movie. Its reputation as one of the worst comic book movies is 100% valid. I know this is taking a bit of a leap out of chronological order, but I figured after watching two awful Superman movies back to back that I'd cleanse the palate with a great one. Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, was a documentary released on Max in 2024 and details the life of the man behind the Man of Steel. It mainly focuses on the tragic horseback accident that left him paralyzed and how he overcame that, but we do get glimpses into his life before the accident. From his childhood, living in a broken home, constantly trying to please his father, to his rise to stardom as Superman, his relationships and family life and the eventual dysfunction that came with it, his diminishing returns as an actor and the failure of the later Superman movies. And having just watched them all, the movie adds an extra bit of context to that saga. We know how good the first two were, and we know how awful the last two were, but this movie shows the impact they had on Reeves' life and career, both positive and negative. The emotional meat of the documentary shows the struggle of him living with his disability and learning to cope with it. But it doesn't just stew in the tragedy. I thought it was interesting how the accident ended up bringing him closer to his family and helping him connect with people. It talks about his activism both before and after, showing all the good he did for the disabled community. And it wasn't always perfect, just like he wasn't always perfect. There's always this misconception that actors, particularly ones that play superheroes, are exactly like the characters they play, or at least expected to act that way. And Reeve makes it clear that he is not a hero. He's just a guy trying to do his best. The movie can get very devastating and heartbreaking, and unless you don't have a soul, you will most likely cry in this. The part that broke me the most was Robin Williams speaking at his funeral. I didn't know they had such a close relationship, and listening to his words and the sadness in his voice was just a punch in the gut. I like the way the doc is presented. It's very visually and narratively interesting. There are a lot of interesting testimonials from his kids, family, friends, and colleagues. And overall, it was just a great documentary. You watch it and it's hard not to feel inspired to just go out and do something, to better your life, to better the lives of others, to help people. If someone can overcome one of the worst things that can happen to a person and turn it into something good, then we can literally do anything. Would highly recommend if you haven't seen it already. After almost 20 years without a Superman movie, Warner's decided it was high time they take another crack at it. Superman Returns was released in 2006 and was directed by X-Men director Bryan Singer.
White fur, blacklisted, canine molester!
And rather than being a complete reboot, this movie acts as a direct sequel to the 1978 Superman. It sees Kal-El, played this time by Brandon Routh, returning to Earth after a 5-year absence where it seems like everything has kind of moved on without him. The world is more or less forgotten about Superman, and the love of his life, Lois Lane, played this time by Kate Bosworth, has settled down, married James Marsden, and started a family. But while Clark is trying to catch up on everything he missed, Lex Luthor, played this time by Kevin Spacey,
White fur, blacklisted!
has been allowed to walk free and is planning his revenge by stealing Superman's family crystals and combining them with a bit of kryptonite to recreate the Fortress of Solitude, which will terraform the city. And God, sorry, it was just describing this movie was putting me to sleep. Funnily enough, watching the movie was also doing the same thing. Fuck me, was this ever boring. I understand the mindset of not wanting to make the same mistake the previous movie did and trying to recapture the first, so having to play it kind of safe for a bit. But this seriously feels like they said, what if we remade the first movie and sucked all the life and energy out of it? The movie is such a slog to get through, and it's filled with moments that are just retreads of moments that were done much better in the original. There are shreds of decent ideas, even though it's very uncharacteristic for Superman to leave for that long. I kind of like the idea of him having to deal with the consequences of that, and everyone just kind of moving on without him. But apparently we're a fickle species, because the moment he saves a plane from falling out of the sky, everyone is elated to have him back. The look of the film is also pretty ugly. They try their best to recapture the look and feel of the Donner films, but everything looks so bland, washed out, and the VFX, woof. I won't go as far as to say their quest for peace bad, but there are several flying scenes where Superman looks like he just broke out of the Polar Express. The acting is kind of a mixed bag. Everyone tries their best, but it's clear that they were picked for how closely they resemble the 78 cast rather than for their actual chemistry with each other. Brandon Routh is fine, but he comes across as someone acting rather than he is this character. He doesn't have the lovable dorkiness of Clark Kent, and he doesn't have the warmth and charm of Superman. Even when he's flying around trying to look determined, he just kind of looks blank. Lois isn't terrible, but she never reaches the level that Margot Kidder does. When she was pissed off, impatient, head over heels, you bought it. Honestly, the best one out of all of them is Spacey as Luthor.
Molester!
He captures the camp of Gene Hackman while also balancing out a sort of ruthlessness and being a bit more refined. Also, I know I made the Bezos comparison earlier in the video, but Spacey actually does look like Bezos in this movie. There are also some pretty morbidly funny scenes that got a chuckle out of me, like a scene with Lex's pet Pomeranians where it's revealed that one of them ate the other one, or when Superman is in the hospital and Perry White has 2 potential headlines prepped in advance depending on the outcome. Outside of that, this movie did nothing for me. I wasn't invested in the story or characters, I wasn't impressed by the visuals or the acting. I was really just waiting for it to be over. While it is technically better than Superman 4, I'd rather watch that again than this. After Superman Returns bombed pretty hard at the box office, Warner decided to reboot the franchise again with Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, released in 2013. This movie starts from scratch with a new origin story where we see Clark Kent, played by Henry Cavill, coming down to Earth, having to adjust to his powers, discover who he is, and has to stop General Zod, played this time by Michael Shannon, from destroying the planet in an attempt to resurrect Krypton by throwing him through like 80 buildings and snapping his neck. I did a bucket list video on this movie back in season 4, but my thoughts on it probably aren't as coherent or well thought out as they could have been. Plus, I was probably due for a rewatch anyway. The first couple times I tried watching this movie, I fell asleep. And when I finally made it all the way through, I thought it was not good, but not terrible either. And upon rewatch, I feel about the same. There are things that I like and respect about the movie for sure, but for every one thing the movie does right, there are 2 more things that the movie does wrong. The actors across the board are really solid. Henry Cavill makes for a unique Superman who feels a bit more lost and unsure and is learning what it means to be a hero, which could have made for an interesting story. If only the characters had any weight or personality to them. And it's not just Superman. All of the characters are like this. They don't feel like characters. They feel like mouthpieces for dumbass, self-important Nolan writing. Which is a shame because, like I said, the cast is really good. Amy Adams, Russell Crowe, Kevin Costner, these are all talented actors and they have good moments. It's just a lot of the script kind of sucks. The out-of-order story structure is an interesting idea in theory, but the moments they flash back to don't really feel like they have any significance. We never get a sense that these are the defining moments that turned him into Superman because we don't really feel what the characters are going through. They just sort of talk about what they're going through. I thought the visuals of the film were a mixed bag. Even though the colors are kind of washed out, it doesn't look as ugly as Returns did. The movie is well shot, save for some of the action, where it turns into shaky cam and CGI splooge for several minutes. Speaking of the action, it is intense and sprawling and over the top, which in the context of a standard action movie could be kind of fun. But in the context of a Superman movie where he is supposed to be saving people, it's honestly kind of horrifying. It's pretty funny going from Returns, where he doesn't throw a single punch, to Man of Steel, where he is straight up murdering thousands of people. Like I said, I don't have hatred for this movie that other people do, but it definitely had a lot of wasted potential and some great ideas that weren't developed on or taken advantage of. And finally, Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice was released in 2016, once again directed by Zack Snyder, and was meant to act as the linchpin for DC's own cinematic universe. I debated including this in this video since it's more of an ensemble movie, but I figured since Superman is in the title and is actively a part of the story, I might as well. Like Man of Steel, I did a bucket list episode on this movie leading up to the Snyder Cut, and once again, a lot of my thoughts haven't changed much. The movie has some good ideas, but it got too lost in trying to set up its universe and catch up to Marvel that it just became a muddled, incoherent mess. The movie has an interesting starting point of dealing with the ramifications of Superman destroying the city and the public being split on him, which is where Batman comes into the picture, but it's drowned out by Batman's hypocrisy as well as a dozen other subplots that are tacked on, make no sense, and go nowhere. Eisenberg's Lex Luthor is so obnoxiously cartoony that Gene Hackman would have told him to tone it the fuck down. And his plan makes no sense. The character motivations feel backwards, the action is once again messily shot and hard to look at, and overall, the movie is just bad. There are things I liked about it, namely Affleck and Godot as Batman and Wonder Woman. Some of the action is kinda cool. And again, some of the ideas could have been interesting if they had just focused on them. As is, it was a messy movie that paved the way for a messy cinematic universe. Not much else to say. And that does it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to see my ranking from best to worst, my Letterboxd list should be scrolling on the screen right now. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts on all these Superman movies? Which one's your favorite? Which one's your least favorite? And are you looking forward to James Gunn's Superman coming out this week? Let me know all that stuff down below. I've got more videos coming real soon, but until then, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you can stay updated on when I'm posting. Follow me on all my social medias. Subscribe to my main channel. Everything you need to know will be in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.